June 19, 1944, 04:28 hours, Philippine Sea. The ocean is black and perfectly still, broken only by the white wake of 100 American warships cutting through the dark. On the flight deck, red lights glow dimly through oil-stained goggles. Engines cough, then roar. The deck vibrates beneath your boots as propellers bite into humid air. Somewhere out there, 300 miles away, Japan's last carrier pilots are coming. They believe they're about to finish the U.S. Navy. They have no idea they're flying into a slaughter. The night wind smells like fuel oil and salt as sailors move with practice speed across the flight deck. Chains clatter, hands signal. Somewhere below, turbines scream at full power. This isn't one carrier preparing for battle. It's many, a floating city of steel decks stretching beyond the horizon. And this moment didn't begin tonight. It began 3 years earlier in shock, smoke, and fire. December 8, 1941, Washington, D.C. While Pearl Harbor still burns, Navy planners are already tearing apart assumptions that died with the battleships at anchor. The old idea that capital ships decide wars is bleeding out in Hawaiian waters. What remains is a brutal, clarifying truth. Airpower at sea is everything now. And airpower needs decks, lots of them. The answer takes shape on drafting tables and steel plates in American shipyards from Newport News to Brooklyn. It won't be elegant. It won't be experimental. It will be repeatable, repairable, and relentless. The design becomes known as the USS Essex-class, a carrier built not as a one-off marvel, but as a standardized weapons system. By 1942, rivets are flying. Cranes swing steel sections into place day and night. Welding arcs burn like artificial suns against the dark. The United States is no longer debating how to win a naval war. It is manufacturing inevitability. Each Essex carrier displaces more than 27,000 tons. Each carries over 90 aircraft. More importantly, each is designed to survive punishment. Armored flight decks, compartmentalized hulls, redundant systems. These ships are meant to be hit and keep fighting. And they come fast. Keels are laid, hulls are launched, crews are trained while the paint is still drying. In an era when Japan struggles to complete a single fleet carrier, America begins stacking them like playing cards. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 6, 6 becomes 24. At sea, doctrine evolves just as quickly. Radar, once a novelty, is now king. Fighter direction officers sit in darkened rooms, eyes glued to glowing scopes, vectoring squadrons with clipped commands. Pilots don't hunt blindly anymore. They are guided, layered, and controlled. The aircraft themselves reflect the same brutal pragmatism. The F-4F Wildcats that held the line in 1942 give way to something heavier, faster, and deadlier. The F-6F Hellcat, built specifically to kill the Zero. 6.50 caliber machine guns, thick armor, self-sealing fuel tanks. It can take a hit and keep coming. On deck, dive bombers and torpedo planes wait their turn. SB-2C Heldovers, TBF Avengers, ugly, overpowered, effective. Each one a cog in a system designed not for glory but for attrition. By 1943, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Wherever an Essex carrier appears, the balance shifts. Islands once thought impregnable fall after days, sometimes hours, of air assault. Japanese airfields are cratered before dawn. Warships die without ever seeing their attacker. But Japan still believes in one decisive battle. One last clash where experience, spirit, and sacrifice will outweigh American numbers. Their remaining carrier pilots, hardened survivors of years of war, are being held back for that moment. That moment is coming. Spring 1944. The U.S. Fifth Fleet gathers in numbers never seen before. Task forces built around Essex carriers assemble like storm fronts, stretching across hundreds of miles of ocean. At their head stands Admiral Raymond Spruance, calm, analytical, and utterly unromantic about what is about to happen. This will not be a duel. It will be an execution carried out by logistics, radar screens, and assembly lines. Japanese planners see an opportunity near the Mariana Islands. If they can break the American carriers there, they can stop the invasion, cut the U.S. advance and perhaps, just perhaps, force a negotiated end to the war. Their carriers sail with hope, pride, and pilots who believe skill can still overcome steel. What they do not see, what they cannot see, is the full weight of what is waiting for them beyond the horizon. Dozens of flight decks, hundreds of fighters, thousands of trained aircrew, and a system that does not need to be perfect, only overwhelming. As dawn approaches on June 19th, Japanese aircraft begin lifting off their decks, turning south toward the American fleet. In their cockpits, pilots check fuel gauges and photographs of enemy ships. Many believe this is the day they reclaim the Pacific. On American carriers, radar screens bloom with contacts. The hunters are already airborne. The sun hasn't cleared the horizon yet when the first radar blips bloom across the scopes. Tiny points of light, dozens of them, then hundreds. Inside a darkened combat information center, a fighter direction officer leans closer to the screen. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. The system is already moving. Headsets crackle. Coordinates are called out. Altitudes assigned. Courses plotted. Up on deck, engines are screaming. June 19, 1944, 06:10 hours. The first wave of American fighters claws into the sky, blue-gray Hellcats stacking into tight climbing spirals. You can almost feel the heat inside the cockpit as pilots shove throttles forward, the aircraft shuddering under full power. Below them, the Essex carriers shrink into steel islands surrounded by white foam. This isn't improvisation, it's choreography. Japanese strike groups are flying blind. Their carriers lack effective radar. Their pilots navigate by dead reckoning and hope, scanning endless ocean for ships that refuse to sit still. Every mile they fly burns fuel they cannot spare. Every minute stretches their formations thinner. And then contact. At 20,000 feet, American fighters roll into the sun. The first Japanese pilots never see them. Tracers slash through the sky. A Zero erupts into flame, spiraling down in pieces. Another disintegrates midair, wings shearing off under .50 caliber fire. The radio fills with clipped voices. Splash 1. Bandits breaking. Multiple kills, multiple kills. This is not a dogfight. It's a system doing what it was designed to do. Wave after wave of Japanese aircraft presses on, driven by doctrine that demands attack no matter the cost. And wave after wave is met, far from the fleet, by Hellcats guided with ruthless precision. Fighters rotate seamlessly. One group engages, another climbs to replace them, a third waits higher still. Below, the American carriers steam on untouched. By mid-morning, the sky is littered with wreckage. Smoke trails mark where pilots died seconds after realizing the truth. Japanese formation leaders try to rally their men, but there is nothing to rally toward. They can't find the fleet. They can't outrun the interceptors, and they can't turn back without admitting failure. Some push through. A handful of Japanese bombers break free of the outer fighter screen, battered but determined. They descend toward the sea, skimming waves, engines coughing. They spot American ships at last, gray hulls, flat decks, alive with movement. Anti-aircraft fire erupts instantly. Black bursts fill the air. Orange tracers reach up in walls. Radar-directed guns track targets automatically, walking shells into paths aircraft cannot escape. Bombs fall wide. Torpedoes miss or are dropped too late. One Japanese plane slams into the sea just yards short of a carrier's bow, throwing up a column of water that drenches the deck crew. No American carrier is hit. By noon, the scale of the disaster becomes undeniable. Japanese pilots ditch in the ocean, fuel gone, radios silent. Some are picked up days later, most are not. Entire squadrons cease to exist between takeoff and target. Back aboard the carriers, deck crews barely pause, refuel, rearm, launch again. The machine does not stop. American losses are minimal. Pilots land, climb out of cockpits, light cigarettes with shaking hands. Some grin in disbelief. Others stare at the horizon, quiet, processing what they've just witnessed. Someone coins a phrase, half joke, half disbelief. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. It sticks because it's true. By the end of the day, Japan has lost over 300 aircraft. The core of its carrier aviation, pilots trained before the war, veterans of Pearl Harbor and Midway, is gone. Not damaged, not weakened, erased. And the carriers that launched them, they are still out there. The following day, American search planes finally locate the Japanese fleet retreating west. The order is given. Strike aircraft launch at extreme range, flying until fuel gauges hover near zero. Many won't have enough gas to return. They go anyway. As dusk falls, American bombs find their targets. Japanese carriers burn. One after another, they slow, list, and die. Pilots returning after dark ditch beside their carriers, guided home by destroyers shining searchlights straight up, turning the fleet into a beacon visible for miles. It doesn't matter anymore. The risk is acceptable now. Because something irreversible has happened. Japan no longer has the pilots to fight a carrier war. And the United States still has 24 Essex-class flight decks, with more crews training back home, more aircraft rolling off assembly lines, and more pilots waiting their turn. The battle is officially over. The war for Japan is not. As the Pacific night closes in, Admiral Spruant studies the reports. He doesn't celebrate. He understands what this means better than anyone else. From this moment on, every Japanese island, every remaining fleet unit, every defensive plan will face the same problem. They cannot replace what they lose. And the Essex carriers are just getting started. Night landings are the most dangerous kind. The deck is a narrow strip of light floating in black nothingness, pitching with the sea. Pilots come in low on fuel, engines sputtering, eyes locked on a single glowing line. One mistake, too fast, too slow, and the ocean claims you without a sound. On June 20th, 1944, dozens of American pilots make that approach anyway. They've flown farther than doctrine allows, farther than safety margins forgive. Some aircraft clip the wires and stop dead. Others miss and plunge into darkness. Destroyers rush to pluck men from the water, their searchlights stabbing upward like spears. It's costly, it's risky, and it doesn't matter. Because the result is already sealed. When dawn breaks, the scale of the imbalance becomes unmistakable. American carriers are still maneuvering, still launching, still fully operational. Japanese flight decks are burned-out hulks, their air groups gone, their experienced pilots dead or drifting in the Pacific. And back in the United States, far from the smell of oil and cordite, something else is happening. Shipyards are still working. Summer 1944. While the Fifth Fleet refuels and reorganizes, new Essex-class carriers slide down the ways. Fresh hulls kiss the water. New crews report aboard. Air groups train endlessly, touch-and-go landings, gunnery practice, radar interception drills, over and over until mistakes are beaten out of muscle memory. This is the part of the war Japan never truly grasps. For Japan, a carrier is a national project. A single ship represents years of labor, scarce materials, and irreplaceable expertise. For the United States, an Essex carrier is a unit of production, one of many, designed to be built, repaired, and replaced at scale. When one takes damage, it sails to Pearl Harbor or the West Coast, is patched, upgraded, and sent back stronger than before. New radar, better fire control, improved aircraft handling. Lessons learned are folded into steel almost in real time. The carriers themselves are only part of it. Behind them stands a logistics web so vast it borders on absurd. Oilers refueling at sea, ammunition ships replenishing magazines, tenders repairing aircraft mid-campaign. Task forces can remain at sea for months, moving like predators that never need to return to lair. And the air groups keep changing. Veteran pilots rotate home. New pilots take their place, less experienced, yes, but trained within a system refined by blood. They arrive flying faster aircraft with better radios, clearer doctrine, and a sky that now belongs to them. Japan tries to adapt. Desperation replaces doctrine. Training time is cut. New pilots are rushed to the front with barely enough hours to land safely on a carrier, let alone fight from one. Aircraft are simplified, stripped of armor to save weight. Sacrifice begins to replace strategy. The imbalance widens with every month. By late 1944, American carrier task forces strike the Philippines, Formosa, and Okinawa with impunity. Airfields are neutralized before they can respond. Warships are sunk at anchor. Convoys vanish under coordinated air assault. The Essex carriers don't just project power, they sustain it. And then comes the final, grim evolution. With no pilots left to contest the skies, Japan turns to weapons that no longer require survival. Aircraft are loaded with explosives, fueled just enough to reach the fleet, and sent off on one-way missions. Kamikaze attacks slam into decks, ripping holes in steel and flesh alike. The Essex carriers burn, they bleed. And they keep fighting. Damage control teams flood compartments. Fires are smothered. Decks are patched with steel plates while aircraft are still landing. Within hours, sometimes minutes, operations resume. The system absorbs the blow and rolls on. For Japan, every lost pilot is a wound that never heals. For the United States, every loss is tragic, but replaceable. That difference decides the war. By early 1945, the Pacific is crisscrossed by American carrier groups like highways in the sky. There is nowhere left to hide, no decisive battle left to gamble on. The future belongs to whoever can generate more sorties tomorrow than today. And tomorrow belongs to the Essex-class. As one carrier after another takes station off the Japanese home islands, a realization settles in, quiet, heavy, unavoidable. This war will not end at sea. It will end because the sea has already been lost. October 24, 1944, Cebuyan Sea. The water below is calm, deceptively peaceful, as American strike aircraft descend in long, orderly lines. From above, the Japanese fleet looks powerful, battleships, cruisers, escorts maneuvering hard, throwing up walls of flak. On one deck, a massive gray hull turns into the wind. The name painted on her bow is whispered with a mix of pride and dread, Yamato. The first bombs hit. They come not as a single blow, but as a sustained rhythm, attack after attack, hour after hour. Dive bombers scream down through flak bursts. Torpedo planes skim the surface, steady and exposed, releasing their weapons at point-blank range. Fighters strafe gun positions, suppressing fire with ruthless efficiency. This is not a chance encounter, it is coverage. American carrier aviation now blankets entire seas. The distance between targets no longer matters. The ocean itself has become a runway, and the Essex carriers are the control towers. Behind these strikes stands Task Force 58, a rotating modular juggernaut of carriers, cruisers, and destroyers that can mass, disperse, and regroup at will. When one carrier needs replenishment, another slides forward seamlessly. There is no pause, no breathing room. Japanese commanders feel it closing in. Every movement is tracked. Every sortie risks annihilation before reaching its target. Fuel shortages grow worse. Pilots train in simulacra of desperation, short hops, minimal hours, no margin for error. They are being fed into a machine that no longer even needs surprise. The Battle of Leyte Gulf, largest naval engagement in history, does not hinge on gunnery duels or tactical brilliance. It hinges on air power delivered again and again from Essex decks that never stop launching. When kamikazes appear in force, the war takes on a new, horrifying intimacy. Planes come in low and fast, engines screaming, pilots locked into their final seconds. Some get through. They hit flight decks, island superstructures, gun mounts, steel twists. Men burn. The violence is immediate and personal. And still, operations continue. On damaged carriers, deck crews work around smoking craters. Wreckage is bulldozed over the side. Fresh aircraft are spotted forward. Fighters launch while fires are still being extinguished aft. The lesson spreads across the fleet: keep flying. Because as long as aircraft are in the air, the enemy has no space to recover. By the time the fighting reaches Okinawa in 1945, The outcome is no longer in question, only the cost. Essex carriers ring the island, launching thousands of sorties against airfields, supply lines, and defensive positions. Japanese aircraft rise to meet them, often piloted by teenagers with weeks of training. The imbalance is complete. American pilots speak openly now about air superiority. They expect to find the enemy. They expect to win. The sky is no longer contested ground. It is owned. And far to the west, the Japanese home islands come into range. Cities burn under B-29 raids launched from captured airfields. But it is the carriers offshore, mobile, invulnerable, ever-present, that ensure Japan can no longer concentrate, maneuver, or rebuild. Any attempt to move by sea is met by aircraft before radar operators can finish their coffee. The Essex-class has done more than win battles. It has closed the future. As the summer of 1945 approaches, American carriers patrol just beyond the horizon of Japan itself. Pilots fly combat air patrols over empty skies, scanning for enemies that rarely appear. When they do, they are gone in seconds. The question is no longer whether the United States can invade. It is whether Japan can endure what comes next. And somewhere on those flight decks, oil-stained, scarred, still humming with activity, the final lesson of the Pacific War waits to be understood. August 1945, Western Pacific. The sea is calm again, too calm. An American carrier steams just beyond the horizon, her wake stretching like a chalk line across the water. On deck, aircraft sit ready, armed, fueled, canopies closed. Pilots wait in their cockpits, hands resting lightly on throttles. They have nowhere urgent to go today. There is nothing left to contest them. For the first time in years, the Pacific is silent, not because the war has ended, but because one side has been completely stripped of the ability to fight it at sea. Japan's navy is shattered. Its air arm is gone. Its remaining aircraft hide in caves, dispersed, starved of fuel, launched only in desperation. And looming offshore, always present, are the Essex carriers. This is the part of the story that rarely makes headlines. Not the battle, not the explosion, but the aftermath, the quiet certainty that settles in when a system has proven too large, too resilient, too adaptable to stop. The Essex-class was never just a ship. It was a philosophy. Each carrier was designed to fight alone if necessary, but together they became something unprecedented, a self-sustaining, self-repairing, endlessly rotating engine of war. When one deck was damaged, another took its place. When one air group tired, another rotated forward. The machine never paused long enough for the enemy to breathe. Japan, by contrast, fought a war of brilliance and sacrifice, but without depth. When veteran pilots died, there were no equals to replace them. When carriers sank, there were no duplicates waiting in dry dock. Every loss cut closer to the bone. By mid-1945, American planners understand something profound. They no longer need to gamble. Invasion plans are drawn up, yes. Casualty estimates are grim. But offshore, the Essex carriers continue their patrols, their aircraft flying training missions over a sea that belongs entirely to them. The war can be ended by time, pressure, and inevitability. And when the final blows fall, when Japan finally capitulates, it is not because of a single battle or weapon alone. It is because the outcome has been engineered for years. Forged in American shipyards in 1941. Proven in fire in 1943. Decisive by 1944. Unavoidable by 1945. 24 Essex-class carriers entered the war. Dozens more followed. Together, they launched hundreds of thousands of sorties, trained generations of naval aviators, and rewrote how wars at sea are fought. They did not just defeat Japan's navy. They erased the possibility that it could ever recover in time. Long after the guns fall silent, the legacy remains. Modern carrier strike groups, radar-controlled, air-dominated, logistics-driven, trace their lineage directly back to these steel decks and the lessons written in blood across the Pacific. On that quiet August morning, As aircraft wait idly on the deck and the sea stretches empty in every direction, the truth is finally undeniable. The war was decided not by a single moment of heroism, but by an industrial avalanche rolling forward until nothing could stand in its way. And at the center of it all stood the Essex carriers, the weapon system that made American victory in the Pacific not just possible, but inevitable.